Thank you, Madam President, and good evening. I hope to be brief on my comments on the emergency certified bill in front of us. But there really are so many good parts of this legislation. I just want to highlight a few of them, if I may. First and foremost, we're here today because Connecticut is in a very strong position. We have worked very, very hard over the last 10, 12 years to bring us to this point. And as we've talked about over and over again, as we've done budget after budget, talked about how we have worked to bring Connecticut back from a time where there was no investment in housing, there was no investments in nonprofits, and there's very few investments in other areas that makes a state strong. We have also managed to weather a storm where we've had a major recessions, almost a depression. We've gone through a pandemic, and Connecticut has come out of those things stronger than ever. And a lot of that is because of the work that was started a dozen years ago. I'm very happy today that my colleagues around the circle have all embracing our fiscal guardrails, and I think that speaks really such great volumes to not only today, but to the future, and to the future of where we need to go and where we need to set precedents going forward, so that when the 5 years comes up, that we will continue with these fiscal guardrails in a way that is appropriate at that time to continue to keep our state strong. Many times President Kennedy had a saying that says, success has many fathers. I would say that success today should have a great birthday because it has lots of fathers and mothers here in this chamber, because where everybody is taking credit for the work that was done back in 2017, which is appropriate because it was a bipartisan budget. But let's be honest and clear with many of those reforms were reforms that started not only in 2017, but started before that, when we started finally paying down our pensions on an actuarial basis year to year to year, which had never been done before, which was started really by Governor Malloy. In fact, and I'm sure Senator Looney will talk about this as well, is that the budget deficits that we had in those years were sometimes equal to the pension size that we had. We could have ignored that, but instead chose to make those actuarial payments and work to balance the budget. We had 2 state employee contracts that we voted on that reduced state employee costs by over $40 billion in 20 years. We have some of the lowest state employee rates per capita in the nation. We have now a volatility cap, thanks to the hard work of Senator Fonfara, and that has helped to smooth out some of the highs and lows that we've had. We have worked hard to make sure that our rainy day fund is filled up. We have worked to make sure that we have paid down that legacy pension debt that is really not anything that is current, that goes back to the 1930s, but has been something that over the last dozen years we have worked hard to set ourselves up to pay down that pension. And I've said many times, when we were in the worst times of our budgeting 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 8 years ago, that it looks messy right now, but we are setting ourselves up to be stronger, more fiscally prudent, and working to make sure that Connecticut comes out of this in a way that is better. And we've seen the results of that action. We've seen right now our Wall Street ratings for our bonds go up. We've seen people move into this state. We've seen more businesses opening right now. Again, we have a full rainy day fund. We have our pensions are being paid down, which is giving us room in our state budget. We are making investments in areas that really matter to people that we can do on a long-term basis. So I'm glad that the work that we did on the bipartisan budget put in those fiscal guardrails, but I would argue that the work that was done and started before 2017, and 2017 was another launching point for the work that had already begun. I do want to thank the bipartisan team that did work in 2017, because it was not easy to do that. It was not easy. And those of us who sat in that room, I think it's 207A, for months on end, we all worked together, and we trusted each other, and we wanted the best for the state of Connecticut, but it was not easy. There were a lot of disagreements before we finally came to that bipartisan budget. And thanks to the work of the Speaker at that time, Representative Arasimowicz, and Majority Leader Ritter, thanks to, of course, our Minority Leader at the time, Representative Claridis, and Representative Candelora, who was there as well. We had Senator Fasano, Representative Witkos, Senator Witkos, who was there. Our money chairs, Senator Fonfara, Senator Austin, and of course, Senator Looney and myself, who were there, along with lots of staff who endured with us throughout the summer and throughout the fall on those difficult days. But that helped us to get to this point where we are at right now. But the work did start before that. So I just want to make that point, because we did make some very difficult decisions before that helped that build that foundation that we needed back then as well. So, Madam President, I strongly support this emergency certified bill with that, but I also want to just point out two other pieces that I think are important as well. One is the excess cost. That is important. It's something that Senator Looney has worked on for a number of years to help our cities and our communities receive more money for special ed costs, because we know that the federal government is not keeping up with the costs that they have promised us, and that so therefore here in the state of Connecticut we are working hard to bring more funding to our communities on costs that are so expensive for our cities and towns across the state of Connecticut. And the last part is in the free lunches, school lunches. This to me is a moral issue. There is no food shortage in the state of Connecticut. There is no food shortage in the country, but we have lots of food insecurity. I had the privilege of working with Senator Mara when she was head of Person to Person, and saw firsthand the food insecurity that exists in our state, in some of the most wealthy areas of our state even. And it has only been exacerbated by the pandemic. And we've seen free lunches help students over the last 2 years through the pandemic, and unfortunately in some places has been cut off because some of the funding has run out. We need to make sure that our students are fed throughout the day, and that they have the food so they can, for all the reasons that have been articulated before, they can do well in school, they don't have grumbling stomachs. We know that the incidences of absenteeism or discipline goes down, and we need to figure out how to move forward with this in the future as well, and I'm confident we can do that. But this is an issue that there should be no disagreement about, ensuring that our kids have food in their stomachs and are not hungry in this state. There is plenty of food out there. We just have to make sure that we get that food to our children across the state of Connecticut. So, Madam President, again, I want to thank everybody who's been part of this emergency certified bill today. Again, to thank the leadership, the bipartisan leadership who's put it together, certainly our Senate President, who's worked hard as well, leading this effort for us here today. Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, for your work, and Governor Lamont as well, and everybody who's had input into this legislation. This is a strong step that we're taking today in the state of Connecticut on a number of different policy proposals that's going to be crucial for our state going forward. And I urge my colleagues to support the legislation. Thank you, Madam President.